Hello and welcome to Getting Your Money's Worth, the show that focuses on value. I'm Judith West, and our guest today is Vincent DeVito, former Assistant Secretary of Energy in Washington, and now a leading energy lawyer with, what is your firm?
Bowditch and Dewey.
Bowditch and Dewey. I think I would just ask you instead of remember. Anyway,
Right.
In Boston.
Like Nathaniel Bowditch.
Right. And it's DeVito like Daddy DeVito. Right. Thanks for being on the show, Vincent.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it. Boy, energy. I mean, it used to be something that no one even thought about, and now it's like the sexiest topic going. You must be very happy.
No, it's true. It's everywhere.
It's got real sex appeal all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Without getting into a long lecture, could you briefly tell us what is the connection between climate change and energy? They seem to be used very often as though they were almost a substitute word for each other.
Right. Yeah, and it's morphed into one word called sustainability for whatever reason.
Yeah, more sustainability.
Yeah.
But I must tell you, I've been using energy for a long time, and I don't really understand the connection. Can you help? Can you explain it?
I'll try.
Yeah.
I've been in energy for over a decade, and every time, especially when I was in government, not so much in the private sector now, but since I was in government, every time you talk about an energy policy issue, whether it was about regulating utilities or talking about geopolitics with OPEC or talking about the California brownouts earlier this decade, you always talked about environmental issues. They always became intertwined because there's a perception out there, which isn't always the case, even though there's a big push towards renewables now, is that when you do generate more energy, when you explore and produce, there is an environmental footprint. So consistently, the consumption of energy is always tied with the reduction of environmental attributes.
And that's tied to climate change.
Right. Well, the climate change issue is based primarily on carbon emissions. Okay. Now, this is not necessarily new, because right now, especially in the president's budget, which is kind of unexpected, but he did put it in there anyway, there is language in there which talks about a carbon tax, talks about a cap and trade program.
Yeah. So that was kind of not a surprise.
Yeah.
A surprise. And what does that mean, that carbon tax or the cap, they talk cap? Folks who make a living in energy now are going to have to pay some kind of a penalty for doing that? Is that what it boils down to?
Right. Well, you said don't give a lecture, but unfortunately a lot of this stuff does lend itself to lecturing. Yeah. But short of it is this. I just wanted to finish mentioning one thing about a cap and trade program. Okay. Cap and trade is nothing new to our regulated markets here in the U.S. because...
We've always had it?
Well, no. We've had an acid rain program, which is a cap and trade program. But that's for the emissions of NOx and SOx. The carbon cap and trade program is new and controversial because the Clean Air Act doesn't necessarily regulate carbon as a pollutant. So that's where the controversy is. And can the EPA regulate carbon under that act?
Do you have confidence in government regulating all this stuff? It seems to me that they're so busy regulating that they don't have enough time. How much can one administration? How much can be regulated?
And who
are the policemen watching all of this, Vincent?
Well, when you're in government, you try your best to be the policeman watching it.
But you'll have to have people doing it. Are there people walking around measuring carbon footprints and things like that?
You know who's doing the bulk of it? Yes. You know who's doing the bulk of the work in government are the career bureaucrats, the PhDs, those guys. They are there all the time. Not the political appointees like myself. We're very busy. We're going to meetings. We're doing representational work. We're promoting the president's policies.
So people are actually out there in the environment measuring things?
Yes. Okay. Now there's three markets. There's the voluntary market, which is in North America, the U.S. and Canada. Even Canada is a Kyoto country. They haven't set up the protocols yet for a mandatory carbon emissions reduction market. There's another market in the European Union called the EU Emissions Trading Scheme. Right. And then there's another market called the CDM, which is the Clean Development Mechanism, which is the Kyoto countries. Right. Those are the actual markets. And in the mandatory markets, not North America, they actually set up government ministries to police carbon emissions.
Is it possible to do that?
Yes.
It's possible to do that?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Verification and quantification are the key words.
Okay. All right. So it's possible to be accountable. Mm-hmm. We hear about the United States should be energy independent. And it sounds good.
Sounds good.
But is that ever possible? And anyway, what does that mean to be energy independent?
Right. Energy independent is not possible. I don't think anybody would seriously say it. Well, let's say every energy secretary calls for energy independence.
Yes.
But it's not feasible. At the very least, we're dependent upon Canada and Mexico. Canada is our largest supplier of a petroleum product,
right.
Not the Middle East, which is sometimes educational to people. But
so
really,
what is that? Just like that's some kind of a marketing buzzword?
What it means is more production at home, and that's how you try and get there.
Okay.
But keep in mind, more production at home is also renewable energy, alternative energy, cleaner fuels.
Yeah, and you know something? Since oil is no longer $150 a barrel or 140, and has gone down to a little as 40, I don't hear so much about alternative energy anymore.
Right, that's always the case.
Is that always the case?
Right.
Okay.
Well, not so much now. I think the environmental attributes are catching on.
And also, I mean, Americans were using less energy. They were using less gasoline.
Right.
Yeah. What is the relationship? You know, this is getting your money's worth. What is the relationship between conservation of energy and the cost of fuel for your home?
Right. Well,
I mean, how is it the oil's come down to $40 a barrel, but it still costs $3.50 a gallon for
right.
home heating fuel?
Yeah, because a lot of that future contracts are still in the play. There's a little bit of Wall Street action going on there, which comes in, and also sometimes people lock in at a certain price, so they try and hedge, against a rise in prices, but that also works against you sometimes. So that primarily addresses that issue. But I think the energy efficiencies, when people see price at $4.50 a gallon, that seemed to be the inflection point when people said, I'm going to drive less, economy started to slow down. And now I guess we know what the answer was, because if we were talking about this 18 months ago, how high,
right.
was it going to go was the question. People thought it would breach at $100 a barrel. No.
So now we have proved to ourselves that there is a relationship between supply and demand. Mm-hmm. Right.
And our own tolerance.
And our own tolerance. Okay, so we talked about briefly, and we want to cover a lot of topics here, alternative education. What's your point of view about nuclear energy?
Yeah, nuclear is the first nuclear power plant to be built in North America will be in Canada. And why? And why not in North America?
We had a bad experience. Yeah, we had a bad experience for one thing, I think.
Right, and This is what's going on in the U.S. right now. The NRC is going under.
What's the NRC?
Oh, I'm sorry. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission is going through regulatory reform. At one point, they used to regulate each nuclear power plant case-by-case basis. There wasn't a set of best practices or harmonization of regulations.
Is there anything wrong with nuclear? I don't want to interrupt you, but is there anything wrong with it? Is it harmful?
Not that I'm aware of. Gen 4 technology is supposed to be tops.
Right, yeah.
It's my understanding, I'm not a scientist, but it's my understanding that Chernobyl technology was flawed, and they're a couple of generations beyond that, and it's purported to be reasonable. The problem with nuclear is you still have the spent nuclear fuel rods, and where do you dispose those? You have the Yucca Mountain issue. I mean, these are all very big questions.
These are all very big issues. Yeah. So having been...
But in Canada, yes, will be the first one is the answer.
Okay, having been in Washington and having struggled with some of these issues, and you've been practicing now what? You've been away from Washington how long?
4 years.
Okay, 4 years. Yeah. Bring us to some kind of a conclusion here. Where is all this going? What can we expect as we look forward?
Well, let's see. You said it's a glamorous industry, right? Well, who would figure energy to be a glam industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's I have all these guys like you, good-looking lawyers that are practicing energy law.
Yeah, right. And we're focused on the environmental attributes of energy, quite frankly, and the energy market as a commodity. And the commodity is not only energy anymore, but it's how you protect the environment. And what part of every project? So
they're married.
Absolutely. Not only in policy now, but also in finance. So when you are building a renewable energy plant, say it's a biomass plant, 50 megawatt
it's automatic, but you've got to worry about the environment.
You don't have to worry about it. You can also help finance the construction of the plant through the environmental attributes that can be sold on the market, renewable energy credits, things of that nature. Is a financial attribute as well.
So where does the environmental money come from? Is it taxpayer money or is it private money?
It depends. So when I'm talking about you can finance the construction of a renewable power plant, that will actually come from tax credits, right? So that's kind of government money.
So that's the taxpayers kind of paying for that.
Correct. Well, it's like any other tax credit, right? So it's a tax reduction for the business owner, right? So it's the government getting less money, right? And that, well, there's not necessarily a pass-through. However, there is a pass-through, say, for instance, if you're talking about the renewable portfolio standards in some states. Renewable portfolio standard is not a national one. It's done by each state. Some states are more aggressive than others. Massachusetts is very strong. California is very strong. And Massachusetts is passed through.
Does that create revenue for the state?
Yes, but it's passed through the utility, through the ratepayer, which answers your question.
It goes around the horn.
Correct.
So at the end of the day, the individual the person using the energy is paying for it.
Correct. It can be passed through. Then there are trusts built as well. There are other monies extracted.
It's become almost it's become a kind of a football here. It's become a way to make money, but it has some do-good aspects to it.
And
Yeah.
There's a lot of do-good aspects.
A lot of do-good aspects.
Right.
To
Keeping
it.
the lights on is a do-good aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? And I suppose keeping the lights on and keeping and improving the environment in itself is too. Right. Yeah. You know, is that where Obama talks? You talk about his stimulus package. He talks about creating these green jobs.
Yeah.
Is that related to energy?
Yes. Well.
What are green jobs?
The green collar jobs.
And what is that?
Is the phrase.
Green collar?
Those.
So we have blue collar, white collar, now we have green collar?
Yes.
What is green collar?
Yes.
I hope it's not ring around the collar.
We're going to see more and more about green collar jobs because there are two things. They are service sector jobs and they are also manufacturing jobs. So if you are a solar manufacturer of the PV panels, you need folks to help construct those. You need people to go out into the field and build the actual generation site. You also need the folks who are going to operate and maintain, but also you need the folks that can do the metrics, run the quantification, the structural engineering, and those things.
Don't you have to get people to believe in those too?
Well, solar's a little bit easier to sell. You're talking about the not in my backyard issue?
Yeah.
The windmills, the wind towers are a lot tougher.
Yeah. Right. You know, it's amazing. The internet caught on pretty good. People kind of, first they were reluctant, then they kind of believed on it. This alternative education is taking a much harder sell for the American public.
Right.
I guess everybody's just too accustomed to flipping on the switch and expecting it to be there.
Well, it's interesting. I would think, the climate change issue was very hot at the beginning of this election.
Yes.
In 2008, up through the spring.
Is it still hot?
Well, we were all pushing. There was one issue about, these tax credits. There is a boom-bust cycle when it comes to tax credits in the production of wind and solar power in this country, and they were set to expire at the end of 2008. There was a question of whether or not Congress was going to extend those tax credits this year. And as the economy started to slip, the climate issues came off the issue. Right. The environmental issues came off the campaign trail. Right. Economy became number one. Well, somebody, I'm not sure exactly which campaign, had the bright idea of turning these environmental issues, these tax credits, the green economy, if you will, into a jobs issue. Right. And as soon as it became a jobs issue,
then it became a good market.
Exactly.
Okay. In a word, where are we? We're on a pretty good track with in a word. Are we on a pretty good track in your opinion?
Good.
You're good. Okay.
Yeah,
good.
The word I would use is nascent.
What's the word you
nascent.
Use? Nascent.
We're early.
We're early.
In this green energy economy.
Well, okay, listen. Yeah. Early usually means productive.
Right.
Let's hope so in this case. Yeah. Thanks for being on the show. I appreciate it very much. You're watching Getting Your Money's Worth. We've had Vincent DeVito, former Assistant Secretary of Energy, who's explained a lot about energy in a short period of time, and thanks for that. I'm Judith West, and thank you for watching Getting Your Money's Worth.